And Enil answered, "Arms indeed, but old and rusty, Prince Geraint, are mine, and therefore at thy asking thine. But in this tournament can no man tilt, except the lady he loves. Best be there. 2 forks are fixed into the meadow ground, and over these is placed a silver wand, and over that a golden sparrow hawk, the prize of beauty for the fairest there. And this, what knight soever be in field, lays claim to for the lady at his side, and tilts with my good nephew thereupon, who being apt at arms and big of bone, who has ever won it for the lady with him, and toppling over all antagonism, has earned himself the name of Sparrow Hawk. But thou hast no lady, canst not fight. To whom Geraint, with eyes all bright, replied, leaning a little toward him, thy leave, let me lay lance in rest, O noble host, for this dear child, because I never saw, though having seen all beauties of our time, nor can see elsewhere anything so fair. And if I fall, her name will yet remain untarnished as before. But if I live, so aid me heaven, when at mine uttermost, as I will make her truly my true wife. Then howsoever patient Enil's heart danced in his bosom, seeing better days, and looking round, and saw not any there, who hearing her own name, had stolen away. But that old dame, to whom full tenderly, enfolding all her hand in his, he said, Mother, a maiden is a tender thing, and best by her that bore her understood. Go thou to rest, but ere thou go to rest, tell her and prove her heart toward the prince. So spake the kindly-hearted earl, and she with frequent smile and nod departing found, half disarrayed as to her rest, the girl, whom first she kissed on either cheek, and then on either shining shoulder laid a hand, and kept her off and gazed upon her face, and told them all their converse in the hall, proving her heart, but never light and shade, coursed one another, more on open ground, beneath a troubled heaven, than red and pale, across the face of Enid hearing her, while slowly falling as a scale that falls, when weight is added only grain by grain, sank her sweet head upon her gentle breast, nor did she lift an eye, nor speak a word, wrapped in the fear and in the wonder of it. So moving without answer to her rest, she found no rest, and ever failed to draw the quiet night into her blood, but lay contemplating her own unworthiness. And when the pale and bloodless east began to quicken to the sun arose and raised her mother too, and hand in hand they moved down to the meadow where the jousts were held, and waited there for Enil and Geraint. And thither came the twain, and when Geraint beheld her first in field, awaiting him, he felt, were she the prize a bodily force, himself beyond the rest pushing, could move the chair of Idylls. Yniel's rusted arms were on his princely person, but through these, prince-like his bearing shone, and errant knights and ladies came, and by the town flowed in and settled, and settling circled all the lists, and there they fixed the forks into the ground, and over these they placed the silver wand, and over that the golden sparrow hawk. Then Yniel's nephew, after trumpet blown, spake to the lady with him, and proclaimed, Advance and take, as fairest of the fair, what I these 2 years past have won for thee. The prize of beauty, loudly spake the prince, Forbear, there is a worthier. And the knight, with some surprise and thrice as much disdain, turned and beheld the four, and all his face glowed like the heart of a great fire at Yule, the winter solstice. So burnt he was with passion, crying out, Do battle for it then, no more and thrice. Oh, she doesn't let in the darkness, and then the outer darkness makes its peak appearance. But we'll see if a metaphorical darkness is to follow. They clash together, and thrice they break their spears, till each dishorsed and drawing, lashed at each, so often and with such blows, that all the crowd wondered, and now and then from distant walls there came a clapping as of phantom hands. So twice they fought, and twice they breathed, and still the dew of their great labor, and the blood of their strong bodies, flowing, drained their force, but either's force was matched till Yniel's cry, Remember that great insult done the queen, increased Geraint's, who heaved his blade aloft, and cracked the helmet through and bit the bone, and felled him, and set foot upon his breast, and said, Thy name, to whom the fallen man made answer groaning, Edyrn, son of Nude. Ashamed am I, that I should tell it thee. My pride is broken, men have seen my fall. Then Edyrn, son of Nude, replied Geraint, These 2 things shalt thou do, or else thou diest. First, thou thyself, with damsel and with dwarf, shall ride to Arthur's court, and coming there, crave pardon for that insult done the queen, and shalt abide her judgment on it. Next, thou shalt give back their earldom to thy kin. These 2 things shalt thou do, or thou shalt die. And Edyrn answered, These things will I do, for I have never yet been overthrown, and thou hast overthrown me, and my pride is broken down, for Enid sees my fall. And rising up, he rode up to Arthur's court, and there the queen forgave him easily, and being young, he changed and came to loathe his crime of traitor, slowly drew himself bright from his old dark life, and fell at last in the great battle, fighting for the king. But when the 3rd day from the hunting morn made a low splendor in the world, and wings moved in her ivy, Enid, for she lay with her fair head in the dim yellow light among the dancing shadows of the birds, woke and bethought her of her promise given no later than last eve to Prince Geraint. So bent he seemed on going the 3rd day. He would not leave her till her promise given, to ride with him this morning to the court, and there be made known to the stately queen, and there be wedded with all ceremony. At this she cast her eyes upon her dress, and thought it never had looked so mean. For as a leaf in mid-November is, to what it is in mid-October seemed, the dress that now she looked on, to the dress she looked on ere the coming of Geraint. And still she looked, and still the terror grew of that strange, bright, and dreadful thing, a court, all staring at her in her faded silk. And softly to her own sweet heart she said, "This noble prince, who won our earldom back, so splendid in his acts and his attire, sweet heaven, how much I shall discredit him. Would he could tarry with us here a while, but being so beholden to the prince, it were but little grace in any of us, bent as he seemed on going, this third day, to seek a second favor at his hands. Yet if he could but tarry a day or two, myself would work eye dim and finger lame, far liefer than so much discredit him." And Enid fell in longing for a dress, all branched and flowered with gold, a costly gift of her good mother, given her on the night before her birthday, 3 sad years ago, that night of fire, when Geraint sacked their house and scattered all they had to the winds. For while the mother showed it, and the two were turning and admiring it, the work to both appeared so costly, rose a cry that Geraint's men were on them, and they fled, with little save the jewels they had on, which being sold and sold, had brought them bread, and Geraint's men had caught them in their flight, and placed them in this ruin, and she wished the prince had found her in her ancient home. Then let her fancy flit across the past, and roam the goodly places that she knew. And last bethought her how she used to watch, near that old home, a pool of golden carp, and one was patched and blurred and lustreless among his burnished brethren of the pool, and half asleep she made comparison of that and these to her own fated self, and the gay court, and fell asleep again, and dreamt herself was such a faded form among her burnished sisters of the pool. But this was in the garden of a king, and though she lay dark in the pool, she knew that all was bright, that all about were birds of sunny plume and gilded trellis work, that all the turf was rich in plots that looked each like a garnet, or a turkey's in it, and lords and ladies of the high court went in silver tissue, talking things of state, and children of the king in cloth of gold glanced at the doors, or gamboled down the walks, and while she thought, "They will not see me," came a stately queen, whose name was Guinevere, and all the children in their cloth of gold ran to her, crying, "If we have fish at all, let them be gold," and charged the gardeners now to pick the faded creature from the pool, and cast it on the mixen, that it die. And therewithal one came and seized on her, and Enid started walking with her heart all overshadowed by the foolish dream, and lo, it was her mother grasping her, to get her well awake, and in her hand a suit of bright apparel, which she laid flat on the couch, and spoke exultingly, "See here, my child, how fresh the colors look, how fast they hold like colors of a shell, that keeps the wear and polish of the wave. Why not? It never yet was worn, I trow. Look on it, child, and tell me, if ye know it." And Enid looked, but all confused at first, could scarce divide it from her foolish dream. Then suddenly she knew it and rejoiced, and answered, "Yea, I know it, your good gift, so sadly lost on that unhappy night. Your own good gift, yea, surely, said the dame, and gladly given again this happy morn. For when the jousts were ended yesterday, went Yniol through the town, and everywhere he found the sack and plunder of our house, and scattered through the houses of the town, and gave command that all which once were ours should now be ours again. And yester eve, while ye were talking sweetly with your prince, came one with this, and laid it in my hand. For love, our fear, are seeking favor of us, because we have our earldom back again. And yester eve I would not tell you of it, but kept it for a sweet surprise at morn. Yea, truly, is it not a sweet surprise? For I myself unwillingly have worn my faded suit, as you, my child, have yours, and howsoever patient Yniol his. Ah, dear, he took me from a goodly house, with store of rich apparel, sumptuous fare, and page and maid and squire, and seneschal, and pastime both of hawk and hound, and all that appertains to noble maintenance. Yea, and he brought me to a goodly house. But since our fortunes swerved from sun to shade, and all through that young traitor cruel need constrained us, but a better time has come. So clothe yourself in this, that better fits our mended fortunes and a prince's bride. For though ye won the prize of fairest fair, and though I heard him call you fairest fair, let never maiden think, however fair, she is not fairer in new clothes than old. And should some great court lady say, the prince hath picked a ragged robin from the hedge, and like a madman brought her to the court, then were ye shamed, and worse might shame the prince, to whom we are beholden. But I know that when my dear child is set forth at her best, that neither court nor country, though they sought through all the provinces like those of old, that lighted on Queen Esther, has her match. Here ceased the kind mother, out of breath, and Enid listened, brightening as she lay. Then as the white and glittering star of morn parts from a bank of snow, and by slips into golden cloud, the maiden rose and left her maiden couch, and robbed herself, helped by the mother's careful hand and eye, without a mirror in the gorgeous gown, who after turned her daughter round and said, she never had seen her half so fair, and called her like that maiden in the tale, whom Gwydion made by glamour out of flowers, and sweeter than the bride of Cassivlaun, Fleur, for whose love the Roman Czar first invaded Britain. But we beat him back, as this great prince invaded us, and we not beat him back, but welcomed him with joy, and I can scarcely ride with you to court, for old am I, and rough the ways and wild. But Yniol goes, and I full oft shall dream. I see my princess, as I see her now, clothed with my gift, and gay among the gay. But while, it meant something different back then. But while the women thus rejoiced, Geraint woke where he slept in the high hall and called for Enid. And when Yniol made report of that good mother, making Enid gay, in such apparel as might well be seen, his princess, or indeed the stately queen, he answered, Earl, entreat her by my love, albeit I give no reason but my wish. Then she ride with me in her faded silk. Yniol, with that hard message went. It fell like flaws in summer, laying lusty corn, kernels. For Enid, all abashed, she knew not why, dared not to glance at her good mother's face, but silently in all obedience, her mother silent too, nor helping her, laid from her limbs the costly broidered gift, and robbed them in her ancient suit again. And so descended, never man rejoiced more than Geraint to greet her thus attired, and glancing all at once, as keenly at her as careful robins eye the delver's toil, made her cheek burn and either eyelid fall, but rested with her sweet face satisfied. Then seeing cloud upon the mother's brow, her by both hands she caught, and sweetly said, O my new mother, be not wroth or grieved at thy new son for my petition to her, when late I left Caerleon, our great queen, in words whose echo lasts. They were so sweet, made promise, that whatever bride I brought, herself would clothe her like the sun in heaven. Thereafter, when I reached this ruined hall, beholding one so bright in dark estate, I vowed that, could I gain her, our fair queen, no hand but hers should make your Enid burst, sunlike from cloud, and likewise thought, perhaps, that service done so gracefully would bind the two together. Fain I would the two should love each other. How can Enid find a nobler friend? Another thought was mine. I came among you here so suddenly, that through her gentle presence at the lists might well have served for proof that I was loved. I doubted whether daughter's tenderness or easy nature might not let itself be molded by your wishes for her weal, or whether some false sense in her own self of my contrasting brightness overbore her fancy dwelling in this dusky hall, and such a sense might make her long for court and all its perilous glories. And I thought that could I some way prove such force in her, linked with such love for me, that at a word, no reason given her, she could cast aside a splendor dear to women, new to her, and therefore dearer, or if not so new, yet therefore tenfold dearer by the power of intermitted usage. Then I felt that I could rest, a rock in ebbs and flows, fixed on her faith. Now therefore I do rest, a prophet certain of my prophecy, that never shadow of mistrust can cross between us. Grant me pardon for my thoughts, and for my strange petition I will make amends hereafter by some gaudy day, when your fair child shall wear your costly gift beside your own warm hearth, with on her knees, who knows, another gift of the high God, which, maybe, shall have learned to lisp you thanks. He spoke. The mother smiled, but half in tears, then brought a mantle down and wrapped her in it, and clasped and kissed her, and they rode away. Now thrice that morning Guinevere had climbed the giant tower, from whose high crest, they say, men saw the goodly hills of Somerset, and white sails flying on the yellow sea. But not to goodly hill or yellow sea looked the fair queen, but up the vale of Usk, by the flat meadow, till she saw them come, and then descending, met them at the gates, embraced her with all welcome as a friend, and did her honor as the prince's bride, and clothed her for her bridals like the sun. And all that week was old Carleon gay, for by the hands of Dubric, the high saint, they twain were wedded with all ceremony. And this was on the last year's Whitsuntide, but Enid ever kept the faded silk, remembering how first he came on her, dressed in that dress, and how he loved her in it, and all her foolish fears about the dress, and all his journey toward her, as himself had told her, and their coming to the court. And now this morning, when he said to her, "Put on your worst and meanest dress," she found and took it, and arrayed herself therein.